The Sever Necromancer just got a whole lot stronger, and luckily it's pretty easy to quantify how much stronger it got. They quite literally doubled its total damage output. So we went from doing about like 4 to 6 billion damage to like 30 to 40 billion damage per target hit. It turns out that the affix that Sever deals double damage has not been working for the entirety of the season's length. So while using Reaping Lotus was still significantly stronger, the build was quite literally missing out on double its total damage. And what I'm happy to report is that not only is the overpower version of this build now clearing tier 100 with multiple minutes to spare, that's what you're currently looking at, but a non-overpower focused version of the build is also clearing tier 100, although that one also is including a bit of overpower. I'm just going full hog on this one and saying I want to overpower every time I hit somebody with Sever. The whole purpose of the build is to dump as much essence as we possibly can for each Bone Spirit cast, and then when we cast Sever, get the benefits of Banished Lord's Talisman. The reason why it's so strong in this combination is, again, Sever now successfully deals double damage, and that applies to Reaping Lotus, but every single part of the Reaping Lotus, so all 3 additional specters in the original Sever that you cast, all overpower, and then with the increased Sever size on our Greaves of the Empty Tomb, all 4 of them can hit every single target, seemingly regardless of the size of the target. Now, I'll always have a planner down below once I finish working out the kinks of the build and everything so that I feel like this is the best version that it can possibly be. I'm also going to update the pit pushing variant of the max roll guide with my findings here. If I'm being quite honest with you, if you're trying to push the highest pit possible, you're going to have to get really sweaty, and I don't think that the majority of people looking to play Sever are going to necessarily want to pilot it in this way. So I'm going to leave those 2 options available, just the regular mythic version just looking to do crit and vulnerable damage on a normal Sever, and then if you're trying to get real try hard, going with this overpower forced version of it. For people brand new to Sever, the thing that would really bringing it into its own in this season is the addition of the aspect of Reaping Lotus. We want to put this onto a 2-handed weapon. And because we're going to be using this 2-hander, attack speed's not going to be nearly as important because we're looking to trigger this overpower. We're able to dip into a ton of overpower damage mechanics that not only make us incredibly tanky, but then output the tens of billions of damage that you're seeing. So we're going to start off with the 2-handed mace. It just has implicit overpower, and then the really important stats here are going to be your maximum life and the lucky hit chance to be able to restore primary resource. Basically, anytime that I cast Bone Spirit, I want to be on maximum resource when that happens. And to that end, every single time that we trigger this with lucky hit, we automatically fill up our resource again. What it means is that we only have to cast Bone Spirit twice, typically, to make our Sever overpower. All of the normal casts of Sever are actually just there to be able to apply curses, as well as to be able to reduce our cooldown on various skills, and then it's that overpower huge damage dump that we're looking for. To be able to support this further, we're going to temper on more overpower damage, as well as chance for Sever to deal damage twice. For our rune word here, we're going to be using Yule, which is anytime that you cast a skill with a cooldown, we are casting Bone Spirit, which has a cooldown multiple times per second, and that's what's going to grant us an additional 20% maximum life. I already alluded to the Greaves of the Empty Tomb. The biggest part here is the chance for Sever to deal double damage. You just need to reach 100% between these 2 items. The next most important one is probably the Sever size. We don't care about the Desecrated Ground. The movement speed is obviously nice, and the damage reduction is also a great way to be able to shore up some of the issues, especially if you need to move some points around in your skill tree. Because we're an overpower build, we're obviously using Blood Moon Breaches for a huge additional multiplier. The only other stat that you care than the damage would be the maximum life roll. Then here's where you're going to be putting your second rune word, which is Essential Disdain. This is going to cast Horrid Decrepify, which will also trigger our Abhorrent Decrepify from the skill tree. What this also means is that you don't have to have it on your skill bar, and we don't need to run Cursed Aura to be able to benefit from this. You'll see that as I'm running through packs of monsters, I'll just trigger this every once in a while just to help manage my cooldowns as I'm moving to engage different packs. For the gloves, if you need it, critical strike chance to be able to hit your cap, if not more attack speed, then we obviously want Sever and then maximum life. Soul Rift duration here is incredibly important stat. I might even want to masterwork crit on this. Against a single target boss in the pit, we don't have 100% uptime on Soul Rift. I've already accounted for all of the other things that Soul Rift typically gives you the benefit of, but that barrier helps you to basically be able to ignore the majority of boss mechanics. So whenever it has a little bit of downtime, you actually have to start dodging stuff. The other thing that you want to temper on is overpower damage. Then here's where we're putting Sacrificial. Since we are sacrificing all 3 damage bonuses, so our shadow damage on our warriors, overpower damage on our mages, and crit damage on our golem, this is the strongest aspect that we can add on to the build outside of the damned aspect as well. So it's a huge total damage multi. We're using a plethora of mythics on this build. Do you need them? No. Will your build be significantly weaker without them? And this far into the season, when we're talking about pit pushing to its maximum. If you need to do that, you're going to have some mythics. Shroud of False Death adds on an insane amount of overall damage to the build. It also helps to shore up our total armor. It gives us additional cooldown. It gives us additional lucky hit chance, more damage reduction, more crit chance. It is just insane how many bonuses that this grants. If you haven't quite yet picked up on Shroud of False Death and why it's so good, I'll go ahead and link my video right here where I do a full breakdown for the Necromancer of just how powerful it is, and hopefully that can help to give some better context for why you're seeing it on so many different builds. Then obviously Era Perdition is just absolutely cracked out of its gourd for this build. Movement speed so that we're not super slow, massive amount of critical strike chance, lucky hit chance to be able to reset our cooldowns. The 4 ranks to the core skills is obviously very nice, and then the huge damage multiplier as well. The build kind of completely revolves around Banished Lord's Talisman, so having as strong of one as possible is going to be your utmost priority. I want to be critically masterworking on both maximum life and attack speed here to be able to hit our caps, and then everything else is just kind of like nice to have, but the damage value on the actual aspect itself, the 60% total damage, is going to be your biggest priority. For your other ring, you're going to want to get any combination of stats like attack speed or crit chance if you need them to hit your caps. More intelligence or maximum life here is obviously very good. And then we need to temper on 1 cast of Macabre skill grants essence, and then more overpower damage. Here's where I'm putting damned aspect. We're triggering our curse. It's getting us 50% bonus damage. That also works for overpower damage, obviously. But just to like very quickly dip into why that Macabre skill is so important, when you cast Own Spirit, it typically will consume all of your resource. Because we have Macabre skill will grant us resource, it means that every single time that we cast Bone Spirit, even if we don't trigger our lucky hit chance to be able to restore all of our essence, etc., we will be able to cast Sever at least 1 time, and typically multiple times. And obviously Ring of Starless Skies. This thing's just absolutely cracked out of its score. I already alluded to it, but we're sacrificing Reapers for additional shadow damage, Bone Mages for additional overpower damage, and then crit damage on our Golem. Now that being said, if you're having trouble either managing your critical strike chance or your resistances, do not be ashamed of either sacrificing your skirmishers or your defenders. I'm just going to touch on the big things here from the skill tree. It's going to be included down in the description below again, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. Obviously max out Sever. We do want Sever to apply Vulnerable, Blight for the additional damage. You'll notice that we're not currently running Blood Mist. If you just absolutely refuse to not run Blood Mist, to not have a form of Unstoppable, you would get rid of Blight and you would run Blood Mist right here with whenever you cast a skill that overpowers reset its cooldown. Don't sleep on that. It's a really important additional point. I personally am just trying to push, meaning I'm also willing to fish a little bit here. So if I just get a bad combination of monsters that I know will just CC me into the ground, I just reset my run. But if you're not somebody who's interested in doing that, swap out these points right here. I'm also putting in the maximum number of points in spiked armor. You'll see that I am just under armor cap here, but with my Soothing Spice on, I'm now just about at armor cap. Then as well as Sage Whispers, I do Chorus of War, and then we're going to be consuming Elixir of Resourcefulness, and you'll see that altogether I'm now at armor cap. I'm now at res cap. I'm actually slightly over res cap. And then in addition to that, my resting essence is at 156. This will go up with additional sources from our Paragon board. But the 4 points here with Shroud is what I currently need to be able to hit this armor cap. If not, you would have to manage your resistances more aggressively through your Paragon board and then swap over one of your gems to a skull to be able to reach that cap. Like I said, Abhorrent Decrepify triggered through our rune word, picking up the 3 passives here. You'll notice that we don't have any sources of Fortify generation other than Necrotic Carapace. Generating Fortify is really important for overpower damage. If you don't have Shroud of False Death, you have to put at least 1 point here. We just care about the CC of Corpse Tendrils, the actual pull. We're not using Blood Begets Blood, and we don't need Vulnerable, as well as we're automatically slowing everything with Decrepify, so just the 1 point here. Maxing out both Gloom as well as Terror. We don't care about the other 2. We do need 4 ranks into Rapid Ossification for this to feel particularly good, to be able to continuously spam this close to monsters. You'll notice that we're also picking up Bone Spirit with Dreadful Bone Spirit. Building down to the rest of the tree, I do not currently need any points into Inspiring Leader to hit crit cap. We are doing Standalone, Memento Mori, as many points into Soul Rift as we can possibly get to manage its cooldown, and then Affliction. The Paragon will also be detailed in the build planner down below, but I'll just do a very quick overview of it. I'm needing to pick up as many sources of resistance in my Paragon board as I can to be able to hit res cap without needing to sacrifice defenders. Putting Amplify into our starter board. Up into Bloodbath, we are putting our Eliminator, picking up as much DR and res as we can possibly find. Building over into Flesh Eater, we want the maximum life here, and then this is where we're putting Sacrificial. Building up into more maximum life and more maximum res. Down into Frailty, this is where you're going to be putting Dominate. As you fill out the rest of your board, you'll fill in the willpower here, picking up a ton of additional maximum life and attack speed here, res in armor all throughout your Meticulous node. And then lastly, we're going to build into Bone Graft. I know, Bone Graft. What? Where's Blood Begets Blood? You have absolutely 0% uptime of the Blood Begets Blood damage multiplier against a boss. And the boss is where we are losing the majority of our time in endgame pit pushing. So I just find that having a really bad uptime on a low multiplier there is not worth the benefit that you get from the maximum life nodes. Instead, here's where you can put Essence because it's a great dex board. You can also just pick up generic critical strike damage here, a bunch of all resistance as well as maximum life, a bunch of damage reduction in all resistance, and a huge amount of maximum essence. The great part here is that you also get just a little bit of critical strike chance, so about 5% crit here, and then the Bone Graft legendary node. Now we are hitting targets with Bone Spirit all of the time. What that means is that we have permanent uptime on both the 8% damage multiplier and the 16 maximum essence. Now for our mercenaries, we're going with a kind of interesting combination here. Subo, turns out that with his Molotov and his salvo, as well as the explosive charges, is just a really good source of being able to trigger lucky hit chance. I very recently put out a video where I explain a bunch of ways for you to be able to manage your lucky hit chance. I guess I can go ahead and link to that as well. But the benefit of your mercenaries is that they actually trigger Abhorrent Decrepify. So any way that you can trigger as many instances of damage from them as possible, the better that your cooldowns are going to be. On top of that, Subo does grant you an overpowered damage bonus whenever you successfully overpower against a target that has the explosive charges on it. And then on top of that, it causes them to detonate multiple times, which are more triggers for your Decrepify to be able to reduce your cooldowns even further. To that same end, we're currently using Altkin with Storm of Fire. While it has a 20-second cooldown, it's up for 10 seconds, and then it applies burning damage for 3 seconds. And then on top of that, has a chance to stun. So it's a pretty decent tool for being able to apply stagger, just a huge amount of AoE lucky hit chance procs that are capable of reducing those cooldowns. So how do I feel about my now invisible Sever Necromancer? Well, I'm actually pretty happy with how this turned out, considering we had to cut some corners both on our gear and our masterworking because I've just run out of Obdicite, and I wanted to get some coverage on this as soon as possible because I knew people were going to be waiting for an update based off of the patch. I think that this forcing overpower is just really consistent, pretty finely tuned at this point. This build in its current state already has a little bit more of a ceiling to be able to reach, mostly in my glyphs and in my Paragon, but Sever is in a very good place at this point in the season, firmly in the A tier, doing some pretty cool stuff. But that's it. I think I'm going to mostly leave the build here at this point. I have a lot of other things I need to be testing. I want to be getting my way over to like Infinimist and dot builds as well. I have a really nasty Ebon Piercer that Crip actually gifted me on like day 2. It's quite literally a 4GA perfect Ebon Piercer. So I'm going to see what that thing do, but I'm excited to be able to give this to y'all. Again, look forward to the update on Maxroll for the pit pushing variant once I'm done fine tuning this. Just give me a couple days on that one. Use the planner down below. Thank you very much for watching this video as well. If you're brand new here, subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me. I'm just about to hit 60,000, which is a massive, massive milestone, which is just wild to consider. Go ahead and leave a like on the video as well if you liked it. And then down in the comments, do you have questions, comments, concerns, ideas, different findings, new ways of running the build, anything that's weird you've been running into? I'd love to hear from you. I try to spend as much time down in my comments as I possibly can. But that's enough of me shilling for myself. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly, truly hope that it helps, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.